Well, hello, Nativity Bible heads. Welcome to Sunday morning Power Bible Study. I know that we did the diocesan thing this morning, so I don't know what the bishop preached on. I'm going to teach from the first lesson in track 1, which is what's called the semi-continuous Old Testament narrative. And last week, if you'll recall, we were in Exodus 3, right? That was where Moses had the burning bush experience. He's not in Egypt anymore, of course. He's in Midian, what's called Midian, somewhere in the South Sinai, we think. And he gets a commission, which is to say, hey, God's telling him, remember, this is the first time he's ever had a conversation with God that we know. I mean, we don't have any evidence, but he wasn't seeking it. And he says, oh, I'm going to send you, you're going to bring my people out of Egypt. And the sign will be that you're going to be back here on this mountain and you're going to be having a big celebration. I think he should have gone for a more sure sign, like, could I see like a comet go across the sky or something? I think that might work better for me. No, the sign is that, oh, you will be here with my people and you'll have a big celebration on this mountain. So today we're in Exodus chapter 12, but what happens in the meantime after Moses has his conversation with God back in chapter 3, right? That's when God said, who shall I say sent me? Or Moses says, who shall I say has sent me? And then God says, I am who I am. I will be who I will be. I am who I've always been. I will be who I am. I am who I will be. I will be who I will be. It's all about that verb of being. And so God, the God that approaches Moses, is the God who simply is. He can't be manipulated. He can't be represented. He can't be a toy for humans to play with. This is the kind of God that is dealing with Moses, and this is the kind of God that is calling Moses and is pushing Moses to do what he's doing. Now, this is something that's distinctive about the faith of our forebears, the faith that we still carry on today in Christianity, which is that our God cannot be manipulated. Our God is not in a box. Our God is not something that we can contain. God will always act outside our expectations. God will always surprise us. So, this is the God that is working through Moses. So, what happens in chapters 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10? Well, Moses and Aaron, his brother Aaron, they go back to Egypt, go to Pharaoh, say, let my people go. Remember that scene? Let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt's land. Tell old Pharaoh, let my people go. How do you like that? So Moses says, or Pharaoh says, I don't think so. And so Moses comes back and says, well, okay, here's what's going to happen. Plagues. We call them plagues. The word 10 plagues don't appear in the Bible. They're really like they're marvels. They're more like wonders, things that happen. And, they happen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, a whole bunch of them. And fast forward to the announcement of the final one, which is chapter 11. There's the announcement of the plague. And we know that because we've all seen the movie, right? The 10 Commandments. We've seen the movie. We know what's going to happen. Hopefully you've read the book too. But chapter 11 announces the plague, the last one that is going to be what we would call the straw that breaks the camel's back, the thing that has the Pharaoh say, okay, go. There's a break. Chapter 12 is where we have our lesson today, verses 1 through 14. And there's a break, a liturgical break in the narrative. Now, narrative, when we talk about narrative is when we have a narrator who's saying, this happened, and then he went here, and then this happened, and then he said this, and that guy said this, and this guy said this, and this woman said this. And narration is progress. Chapter 12 ends narrative for a brief spell. It is interrupted by liturgy. What we have in our passage today comes from the world of liturgy. Much, and not most, much of what we have in Scripture, I'm talking about Old Testament and New Testament Scripture, is derived from worship liturgy. And it's valid to ask, well, wait a second, what if this actually says, and why isn't it the other way around, huh? Why can't we say that they got their liturgy from this? Because this says, well, you can go that way if you want. I think that's a little harder to defend, scholarly-wise. A lot of the stuff that Paul was dealing with, a lot of things that Paul would say in his letters, he was quoting liturgy. And which is to say, we should not short sell liturgy. Liturgy is our worship, right? Our worship defines how we experience our God, right? It would be only natural to think that our liturgy precedes our literature. And that's basically what I'm saying here. Much of what we have in chapter 12, verses 1 through 14, which we're going to get to, it comes from the liturgical milieu of early Israel. And is it actually something that's retrospected back? Yeah, it is. That's okay, though, because that's the way liturgy is. Liturgy is something that allows us to feel as though we are participating in the originary events. You know how when we do Eucharist, and we say all of those words that Jesus said when he was at the last, what are we doing? We are recreating the experience of being there, that's what liturgy does. It doesn't just conjure up a memory. It doesn't just like, oh yeah, that was nice. That was really cool, wasn't it? Wish I had been. No, liturgy actually is supposed to place us, to give us the experience of being there. The idea that we're not just the recipients of a tradition. We are actually the original participants, and we have actually rejoined to experience it again and again and again. And I'm glad that we get to actually start doing this in person again, right? Starting, next Sunday, right? For the 7 a.m. at least. Maybe also the 10, we don't know yet for sure. But anyway, this is the context for what we get then in chapter 12. Do you think I've spent enough time now on giving you, building this up? Here we are, Exodus chapter 12, verse 1. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, "This month shall mark for you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year for you." Oh, you remember this thing about New Year's? Well, this is what he's kind of like saying, this is something, there's that. And then look at this, verse 3. "Tell the whole congregation of Israel that on the 10th of this month, they are to take a lamb for each family, a lamb for each household." Lamb was a very ubiquitous, shall we say, meat. We didn't see a whole lot of, they didn't, we're used to cattle here. Lamb, sheep, lamb, very ubiquitous, easy to get, right? It's not like it's not like an exotic. It's not exotic. A lamb for each household. Now, household, what's a household? A household, oh, by the way, spoiler alert, what we're getting here are the instructions on how to properly prepare the lamb that you eat for Passover. And yeah, it comes in the midst of the narrative whereby God is liberating his people. They haven't been liberated yet, but Moses is going to get, Moses and Aaron. Who's Aaron? Moses' brother. They were of the tribe of Levi, right? We don't know yet that the tribe of Levi are going to be the priests, but we find out later that they do become that. Okay, tell the whole gang that they are to take a lamb for each family, a lamb for each household. Now, a household, we might think of a household differently than they did back then. Today, we think of that as like the nuclear family, not nuclear, but nuclear, the nuclear family. No, it's not really that. It's kind of like the extended family. You remember the family in Willy Wonka, where you have the grandparents and they're in bed. Anyway, it's more than just mom and dad and the kids. It's also the grandparents, and yeah, you might have some aunts and uncles and all of that in there, right? So it's more than that. Verse 4, Exodus 12, verse 4. If a household is too small for a whole lamb, it shall join its closest neighbor in obtaining one. The idea is that we only need enough. You know how when we do our big celebrations, I don't know, potlucks or like Thanksgiving. Oh, are there leftovers? Yeah, there are leftovers. Here, the idea is, no, we just need enough that everybody gets what they need. Just enough. We don't need leftovers. Do you remember, if we were to look forward into the later Exodus narrative, when the Israelites finally do get liberated and they don't have food and God starts to provide them food, what's the nature of the food? The nature of the food they get is the food that they need for that day. Remember what it would say if they tried to hoard anything? It would just go bad. So they got just for today. Each day, what they got was what they needed. They didn't get any more. They didn't get any less. They got what they needed. That's the idea here back in Exodus 12. The idea of everybody gets what they need. There's not leftovers, okay? We're not talking about that kind of a feast. If it's too small for a whole lamb, join with this neighbor, obtaining one. The idea, no burden, no burden, no burden. The lamb shall be divided in proportion to the number of people who eat it. Okay. Verse 5. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a year-old male. You may take it from the sheep or from the goats. Oh, that's interesting. So it doesn't have to be necessarily a young sheep. It can also be a goat. Now, goats were also ubiquitous. Why without blemish? Why a year-old male? Well, you know what? If you're going to slaughter a lamb to eat and it's any less than a year old, it's really not going to be worth eating. And the male, why the male? Well, I think the male simply because you need to keep the females for what? Yeah, progenitor. Yes, yeah. To have more. You can afford to lose the males, okay? You can afford to lose the males because as long as you keep the females, then you can continue to birth more lambs and have more stock, right? Lastly, but the first thing, shall be without blemish. Okay, so what's that about? The idea is that you are killing, roasting, eating, well, we haven't got to the roasting yet. We'll get to the roasting. But you're using the best. You're not just saying like, oh, this one ain't gonna make it. We just should go ahead and harvest it now. Well, no. We are to take the one without blemish, the best. There are times when the best is called for in our worship. One of the things that I think is interesting when you know how if you look through Europe and you see how they built all these huge cathedrals and such, and with super high ceilings and such, and I mean, you like the Vatican too, right? And so much money going into. There are occasions which justify giving the best. It's all about our attitude of what we're giving up to God. And it is that, and I don't want to be schmaltzy here, but it is that attitude of gratitude, right? That attitude of thanksgiving. And when we give our best, when we express it like that, it's not like we're trying to buy God. What we're doing is it's a natural boomerang, right back at you, God. I recognize the degree to which you have saved me, the grace you've given me, the love you've given me. I can't help but not give it back. And we don't know how to give it back much, do we? Except for how that gets expressed in our physical accoutrement, especially in worship, right? I think that's the line of reasoning here behind, unblemished and all of that. Okay, very good. Verse 6, Exodus 12:6. You shall keep it until the 14th day of this month. Then the whole assembly, the whole assembled congregation of Israel. Anytime it says a whole assembled congregation of Israel, is talking about just the men of over past bar mitzvah age, right? That's what it always means. The whole assembled congregation shall slaughter it at twilight. Okay, so remember, they have not yet been given any instructions about sacrificing animals. That doesn't come until they're in the desert when they get to Mount Sinai, right? So what we're getting here is the language of ritual sacrifice, but it's done in the home. It's very decentralized. This is the model of decentralized worship, of personal worship, household worship, that then gets systematized as a nationwide thing when we get the instructions for the tabernacle and such later on in Exodus. But this is kind of like a prologue to like a protean, not protean, like a paradigmatic introduction to all of that. Verse 7, they shall take some of the blood and put it on the two doorposts and the lintel of the houses in which they eat it. What is up with that? It has nothing to do with the color. The blood represents something very specific. What does the blood represent? The blood represents the life. Remember, this is something that's going to come later too. With all the instructions we get about the sacrifices that come in Numbers and Leviticus, we get all this instruction about what to do with the blood. How do you eat animals? What do you do with the blood? What do you do with the blood? Why? Why is it important that you know what to do with the blood? You got to know what to do with the blood because, well, there's blood there, and what does the blood represent? And what does it represent to God? To us, blood is that thing that, what happens to a body that loses blood and dies? What happens to that body? Well, it dies, yeah, but it turns pale, right? Yeah. The only reason why we have pinkish skin if we're white people, or I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be racist here, but I don't know. I'm sure I'm sure that it's effective in other skin pigmentations, but I only know my own. And that is that I know if I didn't have blood, it would look sallow. It would look yellow even, right? It would like dry out and it wouldn't look vibrant, right? Well, blood representing life. This is what they're supposed to take. Life and taking of blood, taking of life, was considered to be something that is in the realm of God, especially when we talk about human life. So when you take some of the blood of the lamb, all it is really is like, I think it's meant to be a symbol of okay, we did all of that with the lamb. We did all of that with the lamb. And here's some proof. Oh, we're going to put this on the, and that represents the life, that you sacrificed the life of the animal. I think that's what it means. I don't think it has anything to do with, oh, blood was considered to be something that takes away us. No, blood represents life, okay? Our God is not a bloodthirsty God. Our God doesn't need blood to be happy. A lot of people take that to be what the atonement on the cross is all about. Oh, our God, he needed blood and the blood of a sinless man. And no, blood represents life. And when we smear it on the posts, it means, oh, I too am participating in these instructions. I'm party to what God is up to. Verse 8, Exodus 12:8. They shall eat the lamb that same night. They shall eat it roasted over the fire with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. Roasted over the fire is another way of saying the same, the kind of way that you would prepare the animal for sacrifice. Remember, we haven't had those instructions yet. Those don't come until later in Exodus and Leviticus, Numbers. That's later. Here, we simply have the instructions. Oh, you're to roast it. Oh, and even it gets very specific about it. Look, it gets very specific. It says, do not eat it raw or boiled in water, but roasted over the fire, like we just said. Roasted over the fire with its head, legs, and inner organs. Oh, that's exactly the way that the sacrifices are later get told to be, right? Verse 10, you shall let none of it remain until the morning. Oh, that's it. Yeah, I already mentioned that, right? Just like in the wilderness when they get the manna and the quail, and they're not supposed to hoard anything. They just get what they. So yeah, it's a consumptive sacrifice. That kind of a thing. That's what the idea is. Anything that remains until the morning, you shall burn. So it's not saying it will go bad. It's just like, well, if you don't finish it all, guess what? No, you're not eating leftovers on this one. You burn it. Okay? This is something that is very reminiscent of those sacrifices that are consumptive, in that the whole thing got burnt and everything got reduced to smoke. That comes later, though. But that's what I'm saying. This is a part of the liturgical practice. This is a retrospect back here to give it an originary story. Like, ooh, how did that start? This is one of those originary kind of stories. All right. Do you remember that word I taught you that what describes a story that is written for later? It's called, to describe something that happened later. Etiological. An etiological story. This is kind of that. Verse 11. This is how you shall eat it. Your loins girded, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand, and you shall eat it hurriedly. It is the Passover of the Lord. Remember, they have not yet escaped, but yet we already have this language of them having escaped. That's the reason why we believe this is liturgical in nature. Why? Because later on, they look back on the event and it's like, oh boy, we really had to get out of there quick, didn't we? Yeah, we did. So yeah, sandals on your feet, loins girded, staff in your hand, ready to go. Eat it fast. Eat it fast. Because we are on our way. It is the Passover of the Lord. The word Passover, Pesach, is it gets it comes to fruition in our word for Easter, Pasach. The Passover of the Lord, the Paschal Lamb, right? The Passover. The word Passover really, it means, it's a weird word, and it's really a leftover word, and it kind of got stuck in English language, but the word really means like to spare, like when God spares, like God like does something to like save you. It is the Passover of the Lord, okay? That's what the word Pesach means. It's like the Lord has spared you. The Lord has spared you because you recognized him and who he is, and these other people didn't, so they lose. Verse 12, for I will pass through the land of Egypt that night, and I will strike down every firstborn in the land of Egypt, both human beings and animals, on all the gods of Egypt. I will execute judgments. I am the Lord. The Lord is not introducing something brand new, right? The Pharaoh has already said that he was going to do something like that. Remember when he tried to get rid of all the firstborn of Israel, and then the firstborn of the whole land? It's like the God of Israel is in a contest with the gods of Egypt to see, okay, who's the bigger God? My dad can beat up your dad. Well, this is that kind of thing. Israel's God is in a contest with the gods of the Egyptians. And so Israel's God didn't invent this thing about killing the firstborn. It only is matching the bet that the Egyptian gods had already put on the table, okay? Verse 13, the blood shall be a sign for you on the houses where you live. It's a sign, right? It's a sign. It's not something that's efficacious. It's just a sign. And does God know what's in our heart already? Why did God need a sign? Well, asking us to do something as a way of completing an action that we're requested to do, I think it's just simply a way of saying, you know what? Let's see how good you are at following instructions. Following instructions is a big thing. I deal with it every day when I manage people. You give instructions, okay? And this is what you're going to do. This is how I know you've done it. Okay, you're going to create a sign. Do I need the sign? No. I really don't need the sign. God doesn't need the sign. The sign is a test of our faithfulness to continue to go through the complete instruction. That's our sign. That's the sign. That's a way of like point at like, remember when the United States got to the moon and hoisted that flag? We didn't have to do that. We were already there. I mean, goodness knows, USA was marked all over that lunar lander thing, but no, put that flag in there. That's a sign. It's a symbol, right? Didn't have to happen in order for us to say that it was done. It's a sign. Okay, there you go. When I see the blood, so the blood shall be, verse 13, Exodus 12:13. The blood shall be a sign for you on the houses where you live. When I see the blood, I will pass over you. I will spare you. I will spare you. And no plague shall destroy you when I strike the land of Egypt. So it's like, this is God's way of protecting. You follow these instructions, you know what? It's going to go okay. Last verse. This day shall be a day of remembrance for you. You shall celebrate it as a festival to the Lord throughout your generations. You shall observe it as a perpetual ordinance. There you have it. It's liturgical, a perpetual ordinance. Because, is Passover still celebrated? Yes, it is. if it wasn't for the fact that the Israelites, the people of Israel practiced the ritual of Passover, it weren't for that, we wouldn't have had a cross event with Jesus. That is what creates the milieu. That is the milieu in which we interpret what Jesus did for us in becoming that sacrificial thing, right? No longer a lamb. No longer, do we have to put blood on posts? All of that stuff gets completed then in the cross event. And so when we hear the thing about perpetual ordinance and stuff, in the Christian view, when Jesus did what Jesus did on the cross, well, that was it. This thing about perpetual, ongoing, yeah. But, that thing Jesus did? Yeah, that stopped it right there. Don't need to do it anymore. What do we do? Oh, that's what the Eucharist is about. When we celebrate liturgically over and over again the death of him on the cross and his offering of his body, his offering of his blood. That's the reason why we do what we do with the host and with the wine. The host representing the body of Christ, and of course the wine representing the blood. It's all symbolic. It's all liturgical about us. We are there. We are there. And that's the reason why it's going to be so wonderful when we get to experience it again. Because the liturgy, especially when we celebrate it together, it's more than just, oh, remember the time? Wasn't that great? No, we're there. Every time that happens at the altar, it's happening again. Not that we're crucifying Jesus again. That's not what's happening. But we are re-experiencing the benefits of what it means. Not, like I said, as a memory, but as a participation. And that's what Passover is. When you think, even the Jews today that still practice Passover, that's the idea, is that, oh, we're there. We're there when that happened. It's a way of representing, re-experiencing, enlivening ourselves to the reality of what God has done for us. So there you have it. And next week, we are going to actually get to the big event where they cross the water. Woo! If you have the opportunity between now and then, rewatch the 10 Commandments. One of the you could watch the old one with Charlton Heston being Moses, or there's that one that they just made a few years ago, I don't know, about 10 years ago or so, which I thought was a good redoing of it. But anyway, there you have it. Blessings on your Sunday, and I hope to see you again in church, in worship soon. We won't be doing Bible study in person anytime soon. We don't know yet when that will be. We'll have to find that out later from the bishop, and maybe it'll be sooner than we think. I don't know. But in the meantime, we're going to continue this online thing, 11:20 on Sunday mornings. Blessings.